A very warm welcome to MHA's Socially Responsible series. My name is Mark J. Lumsden Taylor. I am the Global Executive Lead for Development and Sustainability here at MHA, the UK lead member firm for Baker Tilly International. I am delighted to be joined today by Steve Kenzie, who is the Executive Director of the UN Global Compact, obviously UK. And we are going to be exploring over a series of meetings and discussions, a range of different topics that reflect both the issues in sustainability, the issues in business, the issues for people, and also the issues more globally in terms of geopolitics. And we're delighted, firstly, Steve, thank you so much for coming to MHA's headquarters here in the UK, in London, 2 London Wall Place, for those of you that didn't know. So we're going to talk actually today about the role that the UNGC actually has on impacting climate change. And there is often a lot of talk around, oh, we're aligned to the United Nations, oh, we're aligning to the UN Global Compact, the 17 Sustainability Development Goals. But I see some incredible work. I also see a lot of talk. So just for those watching, just give us the basic principles around the 17 Sustainability Development Goals, where they came from, what their primary purpose is, and what does alignment truly mean?
The UN Sustainable Development Goals were born out of the Rio Plus 20 conference, and they were following on from the Millennium Development Goals that were launched in 2000. And the premise was by establishing a set of universal goals that would move the dial on the issues that would have the greatest impact on people and planet, this act of creating and defining a goal would help to mobilize attention and resources to make change happen. So in 2000, they launched the Millennium Development Goals, and they were actually hugely effective. While they didn't actually achieve them all, it was evident that this model of setting goals was really powerful and effective. And the result of that, as we approached 2012 and the deadline for the MDGs was coming to its end, everybody knew that we needed a post-2015 agenda to carry on the momentum. And so that's where the SDGs were launched. And because we could see how effective they were, it was hugely political now at this point, because everybody with a cause wanted to be named in the SDGs, and everybody named in the MDGs wanted to maintain their position because it was really powerful driver of fundraising and interest. And so after a massive consultation and perhaps one of the most extraordinary diplomatic achievements in history, every UN member state signed up to a package, Agenda 21, which was a package of goals. The Sustainable Development Goals are 17 goals, and beneath them, another 169 targets, and beneath that, 242 indicators to measure progress, spelling out a really clear expression of the future we want. If we achieve these goals, we're going to have that future that we're aiming for. Every country signed up. Now that's every country signing up. So we have to be really clear about the different roles that different stakeholders have in this agenda. But it was very clear in the crafting of this agenda that business has a vital role to play. And I think it's really important to say that nobody's expecting any one business to come in and solve all 17 goals. That's the role of the national government. But we do want businesses to look at the goals and then, possibly even more importantly, look at the targets and then see where are we having a positive impact? Where are we having a negative impact? And then let's focus some attention where it's material to the business and to wider society. Let's see what we can do to maximize our positive impacts and minimize the negative. And that materiality piece is really relevant, of course, here in Europe now, where everybody's watching CSRD and double materiality is really high up the agenda. And so that understanding of materiality is really material to this conversation about what goals do we want to sort of put some attention on, because I think this habit that we have seen in sustainability reports of seeing those beautiful, colorful SDG icons all over the place and look at what we're contributing to every goal, that's going out of fashion, I think. I think people are looking for more meaningful engagement. And in fact, the companies that have identified 3-4 goals that are actually material and properly sort of internalizing some of those objectives.
Less is more, right?
Yeah, I think that's really a more helpful approach.
I would agree with you, and I think from what we've seen in as a global firm, we've aligned and we took this as a primary part of our strategy for sustainability. We adopted long before it became a thing. I've been involved in this space like you for a very long time, and half of my job is regulation and our process and profiling with the regulators and our commenting and views on absolutely material matters that are going to affect companies across the world from an independent perspective, of course. But your point around the targets and then the deliverables underneath those, more often than not, I think people do get kind of wedded to the boxes, and then the actual delivery and the measurability, we're accountants, we love measurability, sometimes is missed. And with these UN SDG, if you like, boxes, accreditations, or drives, how do you, if you like, support and navigate those organizations and those big companies as well as those smaller ones who are aligned to it, to make sure they're actually positively contributing? So what would be your message now? I mean, you just mentioned more, focusing in on less rather than more, but then what?
Our role in the market is not to be the enforcer, and we're not a standard setter.
No.
We are, I hope, a motivator and a framework. And I think for many companies, that's where the SDGs come in. So the targets are real. They're properly quantified. But again, it's national governments that are responsible for that, and it's down to companies to determine what is the contribution that we can make. Now, in some places, like with climate, where we have science-based targets, in nature, where we have science-based targets for nature, a company can quantify what is an appropriate level of contribution. On the social side, it's much more difficult, and a company will have more flexibility. But what our role is, through our communication on progress, our annual reporting requirement that Global Compact participants must comply with, our role is to enforce a level of transparency. So we're going to encourage our participating companies to put information about what they're doing in this space into the public domain, and thereby our role is to empower other stakeholders that may be better placed to drive that accountability. People closer to the business, employees, customers, people in the local community can see the information that's in the public domain and then say, that doesn't.
So you're seeing, so where you described that is that the UN SDGs obviously were born out of affecting change. Governments own them, if you like, in terms of that, whichever jurisdiction you're in. But they're very much a tool. Well, businesses affect the most change. What you do individually, absolutely right, laudable, makes a difference. It's about feeling better as well as trying to make an environmental difference. But a lot of people talk about emissions only. They don't talk about the societal impact of the government or the governance impact. Where does, and this links on to, I suppose, the 10 principles, but UN SDGs often get very much aligned to environment and climate change per se, rather than the rest of it, right?
Well, if I wish, it often goes almost the other way. People, when we talk about sustainability, people equate that with environment.
Yeah.
And people love to talk about climate. They do talk about climate. And the key, I think the key driver of that to a great extent is because it is so quantifiable.
Yes, because there's metrics for everything, greenhouse gases.
You can measure it, and so people know where they stand. They they get it. And that's one of the biggest challenges around social sustainability, is the challenges in quantifying it. And so one of our key messages is that if we're talking about climate, all progress is welcome, but it's best to couch the work that you might be doing on emissions reductions within the broader, more holistic agenda of the SDGs, because we need to think in terms of, just transition. If we have an absolute focus on reducing emissions, there can be unintended consequences arising from disruptions in the labor force, or could have really detrimental impacts on communities. So we want to think about climate in a more holistic way. And that's the brilliance of the SDGs, because it gives you the whole picture. We've got to eliminate poverty. We need education. We need health. We need gender equality. We need life on land, life on, in water, it's the full picture of the future we want. And I think it is a danger that a lot of companies do slip into, is putting all of their eggs in the climate emissions reductions basket, rather than taking a more holistic. And even in the climate space, it's a complicated space. There's, of course, emissions reductions is really central, but what are you doing about adaptation? What are you doing about just transition? What about the social impacts of climate in your sphere of influence? These are all important things that should be considered.
That phrase you just came up with really resonated with me. You kept saying just transition. You said it twice. And I think that's really aligned to what, if you like, the Corporate Social Sustainability Reporting Directive in Europe was trying to achieve, because within that framework, there was a difference between that and every other regulation. It was called faithfulness, about having a faithful representation of what was going on. It's a bit like just transition. And that also aligns to the United Kingdom Climate Financial Disclosures point. And I've gone a bit regulation-y, but just bear with me. And within that, a key component of that, which was different to the listing rule, was tell me why, which meant it was the responsibility of businesses to justify and explain why they were doing it, not just because they were doing it, because it aligned to component X of UN SDG 6, and then these were the targets, they were the kind of indicators, etc. So those facets now, I think, have become much more to the fore. And I suppose part of this thought leadership conversation with you is about teasing that out. So that for me, and we'll hold that thought when we come on to the next bit, about the just and faithful/fair role of what businesses should be doing, and doing it in the right way, not just in any way to satisfy a set of boxes with lots of colors in them, to be blunt. And I know it goes way more than that, and we've both been in the space a long time. But linking to that, then does this tie into then, everyone always talks about the 17, which they do, but underneath that are the 10 principles. And you don't hear much noise around that, which interlink in with the 17. But the 10 principles range from everything from abolition of child labor through to abolition of human rights abuses, right the way through to, I suppose, supporting and protecting individual rights and interdependencies within the world. Why don't we talk about the 10 so much? Is it because it's supposed to be embedded anyway? We shouldn't really need to worry about it?
Yes, essentially. So, quick history lesson. The 10 principles were launched in 2000 by then Secretary General Kofi Annan. His objective was to create a global compact between the UN and business that would establish a baseline definition of what it meant to be a responsible business around the world. And the brilliant innovation was that our principles are all drawn from UN treaties that have been ratified around the world. So our human rights principles have come from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So you can go into any market, and if you've based your supplier code of conduct or your company's sustainability program has got as its foundation the Global Compact principles, you can't have a supplier coming back to you saying, this is the way we do business here. Sorry, but Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Your country has signed up to it just like mine. This isn't a northern agenda. It's not a Western agenda. It's a truly universal set of principles that apply in every market. So for an international business like yours, trying to project common standards of performance around sustainability globally, the Global Compact provides that robust foundation that you need, and you can build on it. But it's really important to note principles.
Yeah.
The SDGs are goals. They're time limited.
Yeah.
After 2030, we need a new set of goals. Yeah. The Global Compact principles carry on. This is foundational license to operate stuff. If you've got child labor anywhere in your value chain, you have a problem that needs to be addressed. If you have human rights abuses anywhere in your value chain, that needs to be addressed. So that sense of our principles, we ask for the CEO to make a public commitment. We're going to operationalize these principles in the way we do business. If you haven't already done so, you probably have a problem. And that's it. Of course, most companies do. And I think that what's the big step is making that bold public commitment and then actually meaning it and making sure that it has in fact been operationalized, that these principles are reflected in the policies and practices of the business around.
I mean, this is thought leadership, and part of this is a role as a global accountancy firm. You know, we see sustainability, it's not just a set of rules, it's not just compliance, it is an underpinning philosophy that is being embedded and continues to be embedded across the entire organization, and also as part of a flag waver, torchbearer for the Baker Tilly Global Network as well. We feel it's absolutely the right and the just thing to do. And it's not just, as you say, ticking boxes, which is why I wanted to draw out the 10 principles, because I think more often than not, you're right, people think they're kind of embedded, but we do need to talk about them on occasion, because if you don't, people forget. And when roll the clock back some time before this became a thing and people were not necessarily talking about it, but were aware of climate change and the changing landscape across the world, it was only until regulation came in and the work that the UN did that things started to change. And I think for business, this is wisdom and warning to make sure that you are not just attempting to comply, you are actually embedding it within those points about, well, tell me why you're doing it. What is the impact? But as you say, what is just, and doing it in a just and transparent way. We have principles within the firm, and part of our DNA is about being ethical, and having absolute integrity in everything that we do. We're really proud of what we've built and very proud of our history with the Institute of Chartered Accountants. It's not a soapbox for MHA. But the point is, we're about straight talking and about practicing what we preach, but also getting others to do the same. And I suppose if there was one message when we talk about the impact of the UNGC and what the compact is doing for climate change, two very quick questions. What do you think is the single biggest impact you guys do at the moment? Question number one. And then question number two is, what do you think we should be doing more of to support your answer to question one?
Our strategy at the UK network of Global Compact, it's different language, but aligns to our global strategy. We want to inspire ambition in companies to be more sustainable. We want to enable action to achieve those ambitions, and we want to shape the environment for sustainable business to literally tilt the playing field to favor sustainable business, as opposed to, unfortunately, the way it tends to be tilted, where too often unsustainable businesses enjoy benefits. UN Global Compact is a co-founder of the Science-Based Targets Initiative, and it's very actively involved in that. So we here in the UK offer lots of programming to hopefully inspire companies to be more ambitious in their climate action. We have, and then to enable that, we offer an accelerator program for companies that wish to set a science-based target. They can work through our program and take really bold steps towards doing that. We provide loads of good practice examples across the spectrum of climate that I spoke of earlier. So earlier this year, we did a series on adaptation. and how companies can start thinking about how they're going to adapt. Starting next month, we have another series on Scope 3 emissions. We've done a number of these series in the past, and it's all available on our website if people want to catch up. We've gone into quite a lot of depth around Scope 3 because that's where most companies, most of their emissions are sitting there. And so reporting, measuring, and reducing Scope 3 emissions is a top priority. And as accountants, you guys will be really conscious of the accounting irregularity of Scope 3 and the double counting, that represents. But of course, that's a feature, not a flaw. If we could drive more action on Scope 3, getting companies speaking to their suppliers and their customers about how are we going to reduce emissions together, that's how we move to net zero as a society, as a whole economy. So that's, I think, where a lot of the attention needs to go, because the pressure of people trying to reduce their Scope 3 is going to drive reductions in Scope 1 and 2 from the up the value chain.
And it will have an aligned impact on societal licensing, won't it? Because of the improvement in supply chain behaviors, cultures and concepts. And we act for organizations all over the world. So multi-global or global multinationals, if you like. So I'm going to draw this to a close. And one of the key things that has come out of this discussion to me is your passion for making a difference. This isn't just a job, is it? This is a fundamental way of life. I do say I'm very much similar, but the firm's line in our most recent transition report was driven. We are a driven organization about affecting change, but doing things in the right way and the most proportionate way appropriate to manage everything that we do as an organization. I think we very much align with what you guys are trying to achieve. The purpose of this series is to share your insights and our conversation around how businesses and organizations can learn and understand a bit more. I certainly didn't know all the history of the 10 principles, but learn, benefit, and be guided by such series. And there is a lot of noise out there. There is so much information out there now, but I would guide not just our clients, but organizations that look at this sort of thing to talk to the experts. And you clearly are an expert. I like to consider ourselves that we know what we're doing and we know what we're talking about. This is the first in a series. We look very much forward to welcoming viewers to the next in the series, and we'll be talking about Scope 3 emissions, which we can do a deep dive around all of that. And also we're going to be talking around some aspects around segmented thought leadership in different sectors, which I think clearly have much more of an impact than some and some of those myths around those sectors. I'll leave it at that point. But Steve, it is a pleasure, and we are delighted to be so closely working with the UN Global Compact and the United Nations per se, and we very much look forward to working with you in the future. Steve, thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark.